Hello, I'm Montgomery County Auditor Keith, and this is another episode of Auds and Ends. Auds and Ends is a production of the Montgomery County Auditor's Office. We do tape an episode once a month. We've been doing this now for about 2 years, and had some fascinating guests. We always have interesting conversations. We talk to people who are active in the community and doing great things and want to learn more about them and some of the programs and activities that they're doing that's really making a difference to Dayton and Montgomery County. And we couldn't have a person who could have been more active in the community in a variety of roles over the years than have Nikol Miller with me today. Nikki, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Nikki and I have known each other for a long time.
Decades now.
A long time, since you were a mere child,
yes,
right? Since you were a mere child. Mm-hmm. And she has had a fascinating career. Currently she serves as the executive director of the Dayton Urban League. And we're going to talk about the Urban League and your role there and some of the programs that they provide. But first I want to know more about you.
Okay.
And some of your background. And I know it's multifaceted. Again, through the years you have had a number of different roles, both in Dayton and in Chicago.
Yes.
So, give us a little bit about your background.
Well, I grew up in a family full of public servants, whether it was working class or, public officials. My uncle was first appointed to the state legislature when I was 9 years old. And so that's how I first began my involvement in community engagement. And back then it was just knocking on doors or passing out literature for...
Worked on a number of campaigns.
For pizza, so just got paid my wages in pizza, and so... from there, I knew that I wanted to do something, in the political realm. So I went to Miami University, majored in political science. I actually tell this story. I have two Miami careers because, I didn't complete the first one within 4 years, but I came back home and I actually started at the Board of Elections for a brief period of time, but then went to work for the YWCA in their development office.
Okay.
That wonderful event, Women of Influence, it makes my heart flutter each year because that was one of the first events that I worked on at the YWCA. But then I went over and worked in the Dayton City Commission office as a legislative aide. I thought back then that I wanted to be a city manager.
Okay.
And then I realized, how many, hats they actually wear and how deep their tentacles were. And, the working on the city commission side was more about engaging with the constituents and constituent services and making sure that, when they called the office and they had issues or concerns, it was elevated or taken care of. And so that's really how I started my career. And then I made a leap over to Chicago.
Well, let me stop you there for just a minute because I don't think for people who don't know, so you're part of the Roberts family.
Yes.
You're part of the Roberts family. So when we talk about your uncle and a family full of public servants,
yes.
A lot of people were familiar with members of the Roberts
Yeah,
family.
so, there was Tom, who worked in state government. Leonard, I should actually say, because he, got everyone involved in local politics. It's funny to sit at their foot and listen to their stories about Democratic Voter League and, C.J. McLinn and the machine that they operated. Organization, I should say, that they operated back then, and and how it was really impactful and getting young African Americans involved.
Some of the first community organizers that we had in this town were members of your family.
Yeah.
And that's you've sat at their foot and then watched, learned, and things from them, and of course that's all changed.
Oh yeah, I definitely was like the nosy kid in the room.
Yeah.
I sat in the corner. I was the person who would go pour their cup of coffee, a glass of wine, get their cigarettes, back then that's when. But I always was sitting in the corner of the room and I was a sponge, absorbing a lot of information, not even knowing what I would use this information for. Maybe I just thought I was being the nosy kid, but, it helped to help me to be able to navigate spaces, understand how conversations take place, what conversations take place, and how to position yourself when you're in these rooms, where decisions are being made or ideas are being put out there. And so it helped me to be able to navigate those spaces better and also have some historical context for,
That's
how
important.
things were done, So, yeah.
Because things have changed quite a bit. So you and I have never talked about this. So you went to Miami University and majored in political science.
Yep.
So you had to have spent a lot of time in Harrison
Hall.
Harrison
Yes,
Hall.
I did.
Because I'm a Miami person, too, and spent a lot of time in Harrison Hall. Okay. So then you end up going to Chicago. Talk about politics.
Talk about politics and cutting your teeth. I first worked for an issue advocacy organization. And I didn't know, that's where I first learned that the Chicago aldermen or, ward leaders were like mini mayors in their community. Like
within their ward.
Within their ward. Like you couldn't do much of anything without, taking it through the alderman's office. And I kind of got my hand slapped on one occasion because we were doing an event in a ward at a school. We were having like a donor event, and this was first when the Plan for Transformation, when they tore down all the high rises and made mixed income communities. And so there was, I believe it was a charter school actually that was built in this community and this particular ward, and there were mixed income community houses that were being developed. And so we had a relationship with the developer, and so we were doing a tour of these these homes, these new homes. They were affordable market rate as well as rental houses. And I didn't talk to the alderman's office. And so my president got a call from the alderman's office like, wow, you're doing this event and and this and that. And so that was kind of like my first lesson at you need to make sure you're communicating with the alderman's office. But yeah. And as
didn't you eventually then work?
That's what I was getting ready to say. Yeah. And then so that was my first job. But one of my last jobs in Chicago, I was chief of staff for an alderman. A good friend of mine who I met working at Metropolitan Planning Council. She was appointed by Rahm Emanuel, his first aldermanic appointment, actually, to fulfill the seat of Sandy Jackson in the 7th Ward of Chicago. And at the time, I was working for the Census Bureau, and I was living in Detroit at that time. And she called me, and she told me they went through this big application process. It was like 80 applicants, and it just like was an interview process that kept getting narrowed down. And throughout the process, she was calling. I was, helping coach her and all these other things. And I remember when she called, she said he selected me, and I was like, okay, not trying to be funny, but why did he select you? But she was a bureaucrat. She had a lot of, expertise in like transportation and planning and things like that. But nonetheless, she asked me to come back and be her chief of staff, and so did that for 2.5 years. She didn't win the election.
Yeah, these are elected positions.
So she was appointed. She didn't win the election, and Chicago has a really rigid election system. It's like election, and then if you don't receive 50% plus one, there's a runoff. So she won the election. She just didn't win the runoff, and so. But
politics is tough in Chicago.
Cut my teeth in Chicago politics. But I will credit my experience in Dayton, to at least make me prepared. And I guess I should say that I worked on John Kerry's presidential election as well. So I had enough experience to understand local politics. And then combined with my experience working in, local government in the Dayton City Commission office, and I had enough of a foundation to be successful.
Not the same level, probably, as a Chicago council, but Dayton City Commission.
Almost the same, because the population is roughly, well, I think like Chicago's wards at that time was like 55,000, people. Right. So it's a small town, and if the alderman is the mayor of their own, ward, similar.
So you came back to Dayton.
Yes.
And now, were you working for the Census Bureau then? You mentioned the Census Bureau.
No. I actually, part of my journey was surviving cancer.
That's right.
I was diagnosed with cancer in 2013. And that was the first time I entertained the notion of even coming back home. And to actually Nan Whaley's credit, she set me up with a bunch of informational interviews while I was still living in Chicago. And one of the informational interviews was with RTA.
Oh, that's right.
Yep,
that's
RTA.
Right. RTA.
And I met with Mark Donaghy and was super impressed with what he was talking about, succession planning, investing back in their employees, and even, the community outreach work that the authority was doing at the time that I was having this informational interview. And so I remember saying to her, like, you didn't have to, set up meetings with anyone else. That first one was it for me. I really, and as luck would have it, like, I think it was like almost a year later, a position became available for their community relations manager. And so that's actually what brought me back home to Dayton, is to be the community relations manager over at
for
the
RTA.
RTA.
And so, but from there, you did get involved in the Census Bureau.
I
correct?
did.
Were you like the RTA's representative or something?
No,
or okay.
I was. I got drafted.
Oh, you got
drafted. I got
okay.
drafted. So part of what my job at the census was developing. My last job was developing the national outreach plan for the 2020 census. And so a representative from the census came and met with Mayor Whaley, and was talking about, how much money they wouldn't have to do outreach. And so they were really promoting this complete count committee concept, which was something I was very well versed on, because that was, part of the, the strategic plan, or the plan for the national outreach plan, and wanting to do a joint committee with Dayton and Montgomery County.
Okay.
And so the conversations happened between the city and the county, and they appointed me as the chair of the Dayton Montgomery County Complete Count Committee. And so we had, I think, 7 committees at that time, and we worked out an outreach plan that touched almost every tentacle within of outreach for throughout Montgomery County. It was the business community, it was the education, it was the community service, community-based organizations, media, faith-based institutions, all of those things, data, and that was another one, MVRPC. So we took a data-informed approach, like identifying where people who typically didn't
I remember you coming to see me, and because that's important to us too, and doing some mapping.
Yep.
And did we support
you some maps
and things like that?
Yeah, the data, so we understood where people lived or where they were. Yeah.
And it was 2020, which we were involved in updating property values at the same time, and so it kind of worked out for us.
Yep.
Because those census numbers are important.
Census is the basis of everything, like everything. Decisions are made on a daily basis, based on where people are, where they live, who they're living with, if the, school districts make it based on the population of children that exists right now, if it's an aging population, what the demographic, what the needs will be in the future, for a senior aging population that's living in place, it's even voting boundaries are utilized based off of census numbers. So it's the foundation for most decision making.
In our geographic information system, where we do property values, we try to overlap the census tracts and stuff in that information. I know the city of Dayton has some similar things when they're doing their communities, neighborhood boundaries and things like that. And again, for funding purposes, and it means...
I think that was like one of the talking points that they always utilized, like $300 billion, I believe, was the last. It's $400 billion annually is, determined, given to municipalities. There's based on census numbers,
So they update that census every 10 years, but it's just not a one-year project, right?
No, and actually they update. So
you're doing updates all the time.
Yep, that's the true count. Like, that's the entire count of the population. And every year they have a survey called the American Community Survey that they go out and do a sample of the population, so that there's some. That's the decennial is the snapshot in time. The sample then takes place each year, and then they use combined data. Like, I think it's 1 year and 5 year now that they utilize on an annual basis, and so you can kind of get an idea of what changes are taking place in your community based on the sample.
So let's jump to the Urban League.
Yes.
So how did you end up going to work for the Urban League then?
So It was the pandemic. Tom Maltsby United Way was convening a group of people. I was included in this group. I initially got included in this group because of the work I was doing with the census.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he asked me to continue and stay on, partially because of the work I was doing with RTA.
Okay.
And so in that meeting, I got a private message from Eddie Cohen. He was then the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio. And
so it includes Dayton and
Cincinnati, yes. And he told me that he needed to talk to me about something. I was like, okay. It was like the Tuesday before Christmas, and so he's like, "Are you available during the holidays?" And I was like, "Yeah," because at that time I wasn't taking off between Christmas and New Year. It was slow, know. So I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll be around." And so he was like, "Okay." And then the call ended early. He said, "But do you have time now?" And I'm like, "Yes." So I thought he was reaching out to me about bus tokens or sponsorship, because that was under my purview, and that's what a lot of people reached out to me about. And he basically started pitching me this idea of coming to work for the Urban League as the executive director for the Dayton market. And I was like, "Can we talk about this after the holidays?" And, and his response was like, "Oh, which holiday, Christmas or New Year?" And I said, "After the New Year, And so, actually, unbeknownst to me, that wasn't what I was anticipating the conversation would be about, but unbeknownst to me, that actually gave me time to ideate it, or socialize it, rather, amongst people who I really, valued their thoughts and their opinions. And I got the gamut of information. It was really interesting. Like, old timers, they were like, "Oh no, Nikol, like, you have such a great trajectory. Like, you don't need this on your, this on your record or whatever." People who were, around my age, literally, as the conversation was taking place, it started off as a no, and I could see the light bulb click, and they were like, "Oh no, this would be good for you." And then people who were younger than me were just very excited about it. And so when we finally revisited the conversation, probably mid-January, it really was one of those things. When I left Dayton in 2004, came back in 2016, I had recognized there was a change, in power shift, in terms of organizations that existed or that were no longer. And so it really became, for me, I was all prepared to give them a list of names of other people who could do it, because I really was enjoying my work at RTA. But it really came down to... I think
I tried to get you away from RTA.
Yes. But it really came down to, like, if not me, then who? And not in an arrogant way, but more so, I can't be a part of the solution, if I'm not putting more skin in the game. And so that's really what it came. I come from a family of public servants. And so, I really just want to make sure that this is a place that all minority underserved communities can, be a part of and thrive, in ways that probably most of us haven't even been able to imagine.
So a lot of people probably don't even know what the Urban League is.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, describe the Urban League and some of the work that it does and the role it plays in the community.
So the Urban League has been in the Dayton market since 1947. So it is mission to move the needle on generational poverty, like keeping it as simple. That's a much longer mission, but I think the one that everyone can understand, is mission to move the needle on generational poverty, and we do it in a couple different ways. One is financial empowerment, and the other one is community empowerment. I think where we are right now, we have a stronger we're stronger positioned on the financial empowerment side of the house. We work with primarily workforce development, getting people trained in the soft skills to prepare them for jobs, as well as helping to upskill and remove barriers so that they can maintain these jobs once they have them. And hopefully it's not just a job, it becomes a career, for them, so that they can be able to provide for their families.
I've had some success stories myself. I mean, of course, as you well know, my connection with the Urban League goes back to Dr. Sarah Harris when she was the director, and then eventually became county treasurer, and I worked for Sarah when she was county treasurer, and then Willie Walker was a director of the Urban League, and I knew Willie very well. But we would hire; they would help us get seasonal people, temporary people, to work for us on different projects during property appraisals and things. And over the years, a number of those people became permanent employees. So we were successful. I know how that works, and we found good people that way.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting because even the needs of society have changed. Like when I sit at these tables and listen about how much tech companies are coming, and the statistics are showing, like 70% of minorities may be, taken out of the workforce because of these advancements in technologies that will be essentially replacing them. It's like we have to be missioned to make sure that these people are available and upskilled to be able to, or prepared to take on these jobs of the future, not just the jobs of today. Like we would be doing the community a disservice if we just got them a job that is going to eventually be, eliminated.
Right. As one of the people that we hired was working in our geographic information system when we were computerizing. I think that was when we originally had them. They were all working on our mapping system while we were trying to computerize our mapping system. And some of them ended up staying on.
Carl, I could probably come work for you if I ever needed a job in ArcGIS, because I was actually, the census trained me on ArcGIS. Yeah.
That's great. So I know you got a number of different programs, and I want to go through a couple of them. Why don't we start with the SOAR program? Let's talk about the SOAR program.
So SOAR is Solid Opportunities for Advancement and Retention. It's where we take individuals through 8 workshops, essentially around soft skills, mostly around, developing a resume, teaching them how to interview. Also, in this day and age, your public profile, means something, because employers are doing those searches, on the internet.
Facebook.
So, on Facebook. And so, helping to clean that up, sending them through mock interviews, and then making sure that we're preparing them for, job interviews after, they go through our program. Some programs we partner with, like the Dayton Equity Center, they have a forklift certification training, and so we work with them in tandem. And so their participants, we teach them the soft skills training so that they're better equipped after they come out with that certification to actually interview for the job. And then we provide life and career skills coaching after that.
How about the Emerge program?
Emerge is one that we're really excited about because it's dealing with the youth, and we feel like we have better success as, providing them with opportunities to learn about career exploration and things of that nature. Last summer, we started a local college tour with 25 kids, and the excitement that they had because they had never been on a college campus, had never been exposed, didn't know, Now we have 25 kids who are thinking about, a career path, or going the college route, We'll be doing that again this summer.
Which begins a career path.
Absolutely. And we'll be doing that again this summer. So hopefully in July, we'll be, not hopefully, we do have the date set. We'll be at the University of Dayton, Wright State, Sinclair, Central State, Wilberforce. I think they added the University of Cincinnati and Ohio State to the schedule this year. And so then after that, that's the kickoff. We'll be teaching kids, the soft skills, mimicking the work that we do in SOAR, but then also exposing them either through field trips or people coming in for some of the career industries of which, they could eventually be a part of, just exposing them to these opportunities and these options.
Now, you recently had an event called Elevate and Empower.
Yes, I did.
And I want to talk about the Elevate and Empower, and particularly it's Elevate and Empower for young professionals.
Yes,
and
it is.
One reason I want to make sure we talk about it is because Dorian, who works in the auditor's office and produces this program, attended this event.
Yes,
and so tell us a little bit about this.
So Dorian and I had a good chance to talk about this before you came. But yes, we had a young professional. It was our first young professional event. And I'll tell you how it came about. 3 young men came to my office one day and said that they wanted to have some professional development networking events and workshops, for, because they felt like that was something that they were missing here. And I said, okay. They wanted to do it in April, and I was like, no. Let's I'll have time available in June. And so my staff tier, right, she pulled together, I just gave her minimal, guidance, and she pulled together this amazing event where we had 4 different types of young professionals, a couple of entrepreneurs, one working in the nonprofit space, and another is our soon-to-be state representative, but she runs a think tank, across the state of Ohio. And really it was about, how do you show up in these spaces, and bring your authentic self and, but also, elevate within these professions, giving advice to younger professionals. We had 109 people registered for it. It was down in our new home down at the arcade.
Well, that's right. You moved into the
down
arcade.
To the arcade, and so it actually was a great opportunity. Fresh environment, located in a central downtown footprint. And then. But it was probably about 60 young professionals who showed up, and from what I can tell, they looked like they were having a good time, And I think the messaging that the panelists offered was very informative and inspirational for them. And this is, the first of many to come now. What we're really trying to establish, our long game in this is to reestablish the Urban League's Young Professionals Network, because we work with a certain population now who are trying to obtain jobs, get into the workforce, but it's like that young professionals is the next level. It's like how do we create opportunities to reach back, and making sure that there's mentorship, that that there's some sort of training and giving back, and making sure that we have a list of people that can be seated at the table at a drop's notice. It's like, okay, people come to me all the time because they're needing to hire in these specific professions or fields that are very niche, and it's not necessarily applicable to the current population who comes through our SOAR trainings. But as we build this, young professional movement, it's like it will make an opportunity that we have more readily available names at hand that, we can offer to some of these organizations, or provide the young professionals with these job announcements so they can apply.
Well, you are certainly a good role model for this, right? I mean, you're what you're trying. You epitomize what you're trying to do. You're from this community. You grew up here. Had some challenges and experiences that you've had, but you've built on every experience and built a career on various things, and so you're a good role model for this.
A funny thing about this, I've never been one of those people who've planned my life out. I'm almost very envious of the people who are very rigid and know the next thing that they're going to do or whatever. But I think what I have done, my secret sauce or key to my success, is that I've just volunteered. I've done a lot of free things for a lot of people over the years, but it wasn't just for their benefit. It also gained me exposure and, honing in on skill sets or stretching skill sets that I didn't know that I had, and so I just was able to build upon each level of my career and volunteer opportunities. I can't emphasize volunteer opportunities enough, I think the young kids, and now, Carl, I know you're chuckling because I'm saying the young kids now, but I think the young kids, they have, all of these, things, social media, Instagram, where, they think that, the people are presenting the best versions of themselves, in these vehicles. And, sometimes it's not always accurate. And what you don't see is the hard work that's going on behind the scenes. And so I think I've always just been one of the type of people who's been willing to roll up my sleeves and, get my hands dirty. I tell my staff all the time, I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do or haven't done myself, And so I think that's really the key, my secret sauce anyway, is that, I've always tried to be a benefit or be engaged. So
you hear people say sometimes that there aren't, among young people, there aren't opportunities here, but I think what you're saying is there are opportunities here. Sometimes you have to make those opportunities. There's a quote that I love to use from ex-Beatle John Lennon. He said, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." And
Yes.
so, sometimes you have to be prepared to take advantage of opportunities that lay in front of you.
Yeah,
and,
that pivot, because I was not planning on being the executive
Executive
director of the Urban League.
League.
I was really trying to get a bigger title and more money at RTA. I saw myself coasting through the OPERS retirement system.
So, there's others that want to be involved in the work of the Urban League. Is there a contact number, or are there opportunities?
Absolutely. We're located down at the arcade on the second floor, 31 South Main Street, Suite 211. Please feel free to drop by. We are most proud of our new facility. And then we also are doing some rebranding. I mentioned the Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio. We're really being more intentional about making sure that people in our market understand that, we are operating as an urban league to serve this community. So we have a new website, www.mvul.org. And we also, our phone number, call us, 937-226-1513.
Wonderful. Nikki, this has been fantastic. Again, I knew we would have a good time today because you've had a fascinating career in your young life, and you have big things for you ahead. So thank you so much. Thank you for what you do in the community.
Thank
and
you.
Being involved. And
thank you for speaking my future into existence.
Okay, well, that'll do us for this month, this episode of Odds and Ends, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for joining us.